Good evening. I am Cynthia Elliott, President of the Rochester Board of Education. Tonight is November 28th. This is a special meeting, and I'm calling the special meeting to order. And this evening, the superintendent and his staff will be presenting the next work sessions, Board Work Session 2, on the strategic plan. And so I'll turn it over to Superintendent Peluso for further information.
Thank you, President Elliott, and good evening to you and our board commissioners and all those joining us and watching on social media. So today is the second board work session around strategic plan. As you know, we have a steering committee that we've been working with of 25 community staff, family, students that have been provided us some thoughts and guidance as we work through our strategic plan. From there, we bring information to the board, and the last time that we met, we really looked at the feedback we received from that steering committee on mission and vision. And we tweaked some of the language based on what the board provided us as feedback, and today we have some samples that we're hoping that we could come away with on mission and vision for us moving forward, as well as some of our core values. Our next work with the steering committee as we begin some more in-depth work with them is for tomorrow, and tomorrow we're going to really start with them some portrait of the graduate work, and really want to get ahead of the portrait of the graduate work with the board as well, so that we can give them some information as we go forth with tomorrow's meeting. And from there, we have focus groups planned throughout the month with stakeholders across the board to gather some feedback. So throughout this progress, as you know, we've been working with Insight. Insight is a vendor that has been helping us, and Dr. Bernard is here today to kind of work through the next phase of where we are. So we'll recap some of the work we did the last time in work session, but really want to get to the nuts and bolts of taking a look at our vision, mission, core values, and portrait of a graduate tonight.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Peluso. Hi, board and staff members and community. I'm Dr. Bernard. It's a pleasure to be back with you guys. When we were here before, as Superintendent said, we looked over some of the recommendations from the steering committee that we've been working with. And so we'll just kind of review those really quickly and then get into a conversation about next steps. So today, our focus is to revisit the core values, vision, mission, and portrait of a graduate, which we haven't discussed so far. Just as a reminder, those are some of the overarching kind of goals and characteristics of core values, vision, mission. We talked about some samples of core values when we were here before. For the most part, core values direct the behavior and decision-making of an organization's employees. Looked at some samples and kind of pulled from what you guys liked from that, as well as brought your own ideas. So Guilford County was one. District of Columbia had some others that we looked at. Alexandria City Schools, and then we brought you this visual that represented some of the feedback we got from the steering committee, where the words that were larger represented those repeated concepts that the steering committee really felt strongly about. Out of that, you guys shared these 5. We were able to drill it down to these 5 that you guys shared were very important and pretty much aligned with your steering committee: excellence, diversity, equity, and inclusion, student-centered, and relationships and safety. And then we went into vision as well, which describes what the district hopes to achieve or be in the future. We even gave you some examples from some of the brands that we love, and we talked about some of the things there. We looked at these key ingredients and looked at some samples there. Ultimately, we had a minute to look at your current vision, which states you will ensure all students equitable access to a high-quality education and graduate each student as a productive member of society. So again, that's the current vision for the district. And so some of the steering committee feedback we reflected on last time, that had quite a bit about some of the language in there. And we looked at that. They even provided some samples, and I recall you guys really liked some of the samples they provided. Based on the feedback from steering committee and from you guys, we brought you 2 examples to look at today and want to take a minute to look at that and get some feedback to determine, one, if you like either of those or if there's anything we need to edit, or do we want to start completely over when we look at it. So if you'll take a minute to look at those 2, that's the combination of the feedback we got from the steering committee and from you guys as a possible next step.
So just to bring us, so this is, once again, kind of recapping very quickly what has been the steering committee's feedback. And that steering committee, remember, is, once again, 25 members, community, students, parents, staff, all units. They provided us feedback. We came with a couple of samples, those ones up there that the stakeholder group provided us. We then met here, we received some wordsmithing and language from the board at work session 1. This is now where we are at work section 2. This is kind of your language as well as the language from the stakeholder group. And now we're trying to kind of come to a point where, how does this sit with you all as we move forward?
So let me just ask in here, Superintendent, I ask you to sort of give us a backdrop of where we are for our community in terms of why we are doing this. What do we hope to accomplish with this strategic plan? Just give the community an idea of, and what this process has been and will continue to be until we finalize the plan, and how does this work benefit our community?
So, mission and vision is our driving factors, right? And the portrait of a graduate, which we're going to get to today, and the core values are all how we'll build our goals for our district moving forward, right? So when we have our board goals, when we have our superintendent goals, and when we have our building goals, they're all going to be aligned to strategic plans. The next phases of this, after the mission, vision, core values, portrait of the graduates are done, are creating indicators and metrics to achieve each of the goals that we'll lay out. We're still in what I will say the very high level of creating our strategic plan. We're not into the nuts and bolts, which will come at our next couple of sessions with the steering committee and with the board. Then we have focus group feedback that will then decide and give us feedback on the language that we're choosing, the metrics that we're doing, how does it all resonate with the community as well? So I'll just see and look at Dr. Bernard to see if there's anything I missed there that she would like to add.
Yes, in addition to that, you're spot on. Those focus group include student groups, they include parent groups. And so we have an opportunity to really engage them in the work that you all have been working on, but also the steering committee, and they're small. We usually look anywhere from 10 to 12 people per group, and we keep it anonymous because we want their sincere feedback on the process and on the language that's been chosen and on the alignment piece. And so to echo Dr. Peluso, we start with the mission, vision, and values to really set the stage for what we say we want to do and how we're going to do it. And as we move forward, some of our key next steps is in saying tonight, we agree on these things and we want to put that out for our community to give us feedback in terms of mission, vision, and core values, as well as the portrait of a graduate. And then we start talking about, if this is what we say we are and want to be, how do we get there? And so those metrics that he spoke to will be the next piece that we'll get started with, even involving the senior leadership team as well. And they get really involved in it, from committee work, focusing on, if we decide that, academic excellence is one of the areas we're focusing on, then there's a committee and they're leading it and they're able to speak to what's being done and monitor those metrics in every way.
Thank you. So I know that Dr. Peluso will also say, just because we're working on this plan doesn't mean that the work is not continuing now. We're putting these sentiments in practice now. But this plan will be for 5 years. Am I correct, Dr.
Yeah,
Peluso?
any
Yeah.
quality strategic plan will have metrics for 3 to 5 years worth
All
of
right.
work, right? You know, and I think that's to kind of guide us in how we're going to use resources, how we're going to focus as a district to move forward.
All right, thank you. So let me just start with the end. I'll start with Commissioner Adams.
So I believe that the top one embraces the community in a simple, embracing manner. So that would be my vote for the top one.
Thank you. Commissioner Malloy?
Yeah, my question that I had, I'll get to my feedback on this in just a minute. How was the steering committee, the people, how did we choose these people? Is it all anonymous? How do we know that it's a true sample of our community at large? How were they chosen?
So, you know, the strategic planning committee, we looked and we met as a team of what do we want the strategic plan to reflect. So if you go to our website, RCSD K12/strategic plan, you will see all the steering committee members that are on the group, right? You know, so you'll have your parent leadership groups as well as a parent that is outside of the parent leadership group. We have students on there. We have our community stakeholders, community members in there.
Was there an application process for
Nope.
this?
Nope, it was an invite process.
Okay, so something went out to the community asking for
Who
people to
wants
apply?
to
or-
be on our community, our strategic planning committee. We looked and we engaged people that we thought would bring value across the board. I think if you take a look at, once again, the website and look at what that stakeholder group is, that's one part of the process. We still have focus groups. We have probably 10 to 15 of them happening over the next month, where we will engage as many others as possible in the process. But we needed some representative group to give us feedback of the direction we want to move in. And like I said, I encourage everyone to kind of look at the strategic plan website where all of those, all of our listed members are.
And I guess I'm just wondering, like, was the board invited to those meetings then?
The board has these, when we laid out the plan, the board has these work sessions that are exclusive on top of the work we're doing with the stakeholder groups.
And so what impact will the adoption of a new governance model for the board, and then as well as our adoption of goals, what impact will that have on this strategic plan?
Well, we're shooting for a strategic plan to be completed by February. We started this work in the summer. I'm hoping that whatever board goals are aligned, that we're making goals that are aligned to our strategic plan, right? And I think that has to be, we can't have competing goals. And we will get to a place where we start to have some work sessions with the board around what those goals look like as well for the strategic plan. But all of those have to be
Yeah.
aligned to
I
each
guess
other.
my concern and the question I have is that normally a board creates goals and a strategic plan is then created around those specific goals.
There is some conversation between the chief and our board clerk that are working on the goals that we crafted. So that work is being going.
Well, we haven't crafted goals yet, but
They have some information with regard to what we provided. And so they are looking, our board clerk, as well as the staff, the district staff, are working on those together to bring that back to us. And you'll have more information on that once Rahima returns.
But it strikes me that we haven't been part of any of those conversations yet. And so that's what's concerning to me, that it's not the board staff that's creating these goals, it's the board working together
We
in a
started that
discussion.
process back in the summer at a board retreat. Yeah.
I know we started that, but it was my understanding at that board retreat that we were then going to create goals, and then that would drive the strategic plan.
Part of the conversation with the district is that so that we can align with the strategic plan. So that's part of that work that's going on now. So that the plan works together.
Yeah, we obviously want it to work together. I'm just saying it's kind of, it should have started with the board and then gone to the superintendent for discussions.
Superintendent's been a part of our discussions.
Where the entire board hasn't been
Yeah.
discussing this since August.
Yeah.
So that's
But
just my
there's been
concern.
some work that's been done before that will be, have to align with the strategic plan.
Right, but since August, we haven't been in any discussions as a board with our staff around those goals. So if those discussions have taken place behind closed doors, that's not upfront to the public. All board members should be abreast of that and have those discussions. So I want to make sure that plans aren't being made behind closed doors with certain commissioners and our administration and leaving some people out of those discussions.
Yeah.
It's
We'll
just
have more
concerning
of
to
that
me.
information when Rahima returns. We can have more information as
Left out of the
scheduled.
loop.
So I just want to say, there's been no strategic plan goals created at this point in time. Right? We have some conversation around
Conversation is going on, yeah.
what is important for the community to see in a strategic plan.
Because when we were we were somewhat off timeline, well, not off timeline, the strategic plan was going on before we were able to craft the goals, and so we were trying to bring those together because the superintendent and his staff were working on the plan before we had the opportunity to work on the goals. And so we were trying to catch up, if you will, and part of the conversation with our special assistant to the board clerk, and I believe it's the chief, is trying to accommodate for that. But if you've got some other recommendations that Commissioner Malloy that you'd like to see, then we will certainly, we can entertain that. Did you have, Commissioner Powell, conversation to this, some response to this conversation? Because I wanted to go to Commissioner Simmons, and then in terms of the feedback for the goals. What's your point? I thought I heard you were trying to interject. I could be wrong. Okay, I'm sorry. Commissioner Simmons?
Okay, and before I give this, I wanted to ask my question for clarity, which is, my understanding is the goals that we previously had, we determined that we were going to kind of stick with them, but we needed to
Right, right.
fine tune them. So there have been some general
Right.
goals identified, but we want to tweak them to make sure
Right.
that they align with the SMART goals. That was the understanding I had. In regards to the draft on the screen at this time, I do like the idea, of course, of a vision statement being short and concise, as it should be. However, I'm going with the second one, which seems a little longer, because I'm really attracted to the idea of free thinking. Because when we talk about high-quality education, children reaching their highest potential and becoming contributing citizens to the community, all of that's well and good, but I do believe that true and authentic education resides in the ability to think for oneself. And so I think that's an important piece to maintain. So I'm going with number 2. I don't know if that can be shortened or tweaked in a way to make it shorter, but I like the free thinking aspect. Thank
I'm
you.
not exactly sure what free thinking means. And so if I can't articulate that, I can't go with that. So for me, it's
To validate it, when I say free thinking, I am thinking of liberation.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of identity and the things that we talk about when we talk about culturally relevant content and things of that nature. That is an aspect of liberating the minds of students and getting them towards a free thinking understanding of who they are.
All right, Commissioner Simmons, thank you. Commissioner,
I needed to add my feedback on which one I preferred.
Okay.
I wasn't given the opportunity. I like the second one as well. I think we can fine tune maybe the free thinking, just as Commissioner Simmons said. I like the free thinking part, but what you were saying about free thinking, I think that needs to be more readily defined perhaps. But I prefer the second one to the first. Thank you.
thank you. Commissioner Powell?
I'll yield to my colleague. Come back to me.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd like to start with and say that I hope the public is paying attention to what the colleagues are saying. Some of the things that have been mentioned here are spot on when it comes to SMART goals. So we have goals, as Commissioner Malloy indicated, and I hope you were listening to every word she said. We do have goals, but they're not true goals. So we must change those goals. We can't continue to work with things that aren't right, they aren't correct. We can't keep doing things the way we've been doing them. I think Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So we have to move forward. We cannot keep working with things that are not working for our students. We just can't keep doing that. So yes, it's an urgency that we move toward adopting goals that are smart. And therefore, then we can look at the strategic plan. Because as she indicated, you first must start with goals, and the goals must be SMART. So if you need that acronym again, I said it last week, I'll give it to you again, but I yield.
Which one do you pick up there in terms of a goal? Is that, or do you not want to pick anything that's listed there, Commissioner Patterson? That's what the question was. Yeah, either the first one or the second one?
Wait a second. Let me go
Excuse
back.
me?
What's the screen? Right here you're talking about?
Right, ensure all students have high quality, or ensure all students have, either one of those.
So, you know, I agree, you know, with the PowerPoint presentation. I think it's very good. But I think you're missing some things here that I would like to see personally as a commissioner. So for example, reading and writing levels. You know, we talk about a high-quality education, but it's not really saying what a high-quality education is. So for me, knowing and implementing or putting that wording in there somewhere that, you know, our reading and writing levels will increase, or comprehension. Because
Commissioner this is the
responding-
vision?
I'm responding to
Yeah.
the 2 points right here.
I just wanted to clarify, this is our vision, right?
Yes.
So you
these
wouldn't
are
have
samples.
specifics
These
within
aren't
the vision.
goals. These
Yeah,
are just
right,
talking about
Yeah.
the vision of the district. So
Right.
Right, so.
in terms of being smart, the measurable, we are, that's down the
Down the
road
line,
for
yeah.
us. So as
Like,
we are trying to craft out vision statements, these were two samples that as we pull the language together, keywords and key concepts that the steering committee shared and we're passionate about, and then we met with the board. We just bridged those together and wanted to bring those back tonight to get some feedback from that to see what your thoughts are, if you liked one more than the other, if you wanted to edit, delete some things. So I know you mentioned you like it short, but you really agree with the free thinking. So that's something we can go and play with to see if we can come up with a happy medium that really speaks to the district's vision, but it's a little shorter, but includes and embraces free thinking. And so if you have a preference for one of those, or as you were saying, there's something else you would like to see, if there's something else you would like to see in the vision, we love that feedback.
Yeah, so that's what I'm giving you now, what I would like to see in the vision. You know,
Okay.
some of this wording, maybe wordsmith it, and, you know, but graduating on time, something like that should be in there. So these are very important, you know, that not only myself, but the public understand, you know, our language. And if we're straightforward and, you know, what we're falling short of in this district and what we need to work on in our vision, then I think the public would appreciate that. Thank you.
And if I could, just a minute, Commissioner Powell, but if I can also just interject, visions are broad. So where Commissioner Patterson is including reading and writing, those things are what the vision will, it will automatically include those things. When you get down to board goals, it's where you would want to put, you know, the specific things that you're speaking of, Commissioner Patterson. So I just wanted to make that clarity. We want to make because we want to have a vision in which it will take us, well, that will go over the 3 to 5 year period. It's what we want to do in order to be able to have this to frame our work and guide our work. It is the vision. So I just wanted to make sure that the public understood that those specific things that Commissioner Patterson was speaking to, while we will include those, and that's what this board wants to do, when you look at developing a vision statement, those specific things are not necessarily included in it.
Yes, ma'am. Correct. It's
All right,
a
thank you.
broad stroke statement.
Right. Commissioner Powell.
And once again, I'd like to reply to that. Again, you asked me what I thought. It's on.
Bring it closer to you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? All right. Yes, you're asking me what I thought, what my thoughts are personally
Yes,
as
sir.
far as editing, and I'm just giving you my thoughts. It doesn't say you have to run with them, but I'm just giving you my personal thoughts at all. No disrespect, but
Thank you.
just
And
what
we
I think.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
We
Capturing
appreciate
everything.
it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Powell.
Okay. So when I read both of these, I'm looking at our draft core values: excellence, diversity, equity, inclusion, student-centered, relationships, and safety. When I look for evidence of excellence, I see high-quality education, so that's a thumbs up. Diversity, equity, inclusion, all students, there's another thumbs up. But then the next three are a little troublesome, though. If I skip to the last one, safety, nobody can learn if it's not a safe learning environment. So safety is kind of hidden in there, I think. Student-centered and relationships, I would hope that one of the outcomes of student-centered and relationships would not only be to develop the individual to be contributing citizen or free-thinking and well-rounded graduates, but another byproduct of those values would be empathetic. As an alternative, the alternatives we could have, and it's an extreme example, a hyperbolic example, we could have free-thinking, well-rounded graduates, we could have contributing citizens who are also sociopaths. So what we really want is to graduate students that are emotionally healthy as well as well-educated, well-rounded, contributing members of society. So my advocacy is to include the word empathetic in that. Either one of them, I think, that to become contributing citizens sounds like something SED would write. This is our document, so I kind of like the second one myself. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments around this? Commissioner Malloy?
Did anyone ask perhaps instead of free thinking to say open-minded? Was that ever thrown out there by the committee at all?
So, yes, I believe the open-minded was language, right? We had productive member in society that didn't sit well with people, right? Because what does that mean, right? So once again, vision, aspirational, right? If we look at some of those, where do we want to be? What does it look like? Everything we've talked about here around goals, right? ELA performance, academic math performance, all of those are going to come. We're just looking right now, we have a current mission and vision. How does that sit with us, right? And we've had some stakeholder feedback on that says, we may want to tweak it a little bit. We got that feedback. We came here, kind of hashed out some of their thinking with it. This is now the next base board feedback draft that we have. I just heard empathetic, right? Are there other ways that we could tweak this mission and vision in a way that is going to be with us for 3 to 5 years at least, right? To get our work going. We're going to do the same thing when we go through the mission, right? Once again, and then we're going to start to get your feedback around what's a profile of a graduate look like.
And if I can just add just one last thing, not to belabor this point, but when I want to be very explicit around free thinking, just for myself, I am speaking in the regards to liberation, liberated thinking process. I'm not talking about being open-minded, although I do believe graduates should be, of course, open-minded to citizens, but I am talking about liberated thinking, so I want to be clear about that.
But even with that statement, I think that has to be defined as well, because these are pretty new terms that are used that, the general public is not aware of what that really means. So, there's a whole theology around liberation. And so what does that mean in terms of the classroom?
And I think as we get into the strategic plan, if people are looking to break apart, what that means, they'll find the information in the plan as we lay it out and become more thorough and critical around what the discussion is.
Elliot, just to make a comment.
Sure.
Strategic planning is a process to develop the blueprint that is going to guide the district during the next 3 to 5 years. The board has ownership on the process. The superintendent has ownership on the process. So this is not the superintendent's plan. This is the district plan. So it is very important that when you're working on a mission and a vision, it is something that you can recite. It's 1 sentence, 2 sentences, that is not going to be cumbersome. There's a lot of other steps that are going to be included in the a strategic planning process, developing the priorities that you're going to work on, developing the qualities for the students. So you need to develop the plan first, and then from there, every year, you're going to revisit the plan, and you're going to develop the goals that you're going to have for that year. If you said that, we want all our students to be reading by third grade, and only 5%, 10% are reading by third grade, then you have to revisit that goal. And it's got to be a SMART goal. So, but it is a process. It is a process.
But we have to make sure that we get the vision and the mission
That's first.
pat it down first. Yeah, get that so that all the others, because we don't need to change the vision and the mission statements once they are created and approved. We just may have to change,
Yep.
our action steps in order to
Yes.
the goals that we are going to accomplish.
But you gather feedback from the stakeholders, but at the end, the board, as a body,
Right.
is responsible for that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Aquino. You're
welcome.
All right, thank you.
Any other feedback on these or suggestions for additions? Okay, so I've noted those. I've got some feedback on number 1. It embraces community. Number 2, most people liked it better, but we want to look at the length of it. If you think back to some of the vision statements we looked at when we met last from our more popular brands that we love and remember, they were short and sweet and broad. And so we want to look at making sure that certain things are a little bit more explicit, like safety and free thinking, open-minded. So we'll look at how we might be able to better express those and have some feedback for you on that. Thank you for that. So we've really gone through that discussion of what you liked and some edits that we can make. The mission, we went through a very similar process. As a reminder, the mission articulates what is unique about the district, who you are, what you do, and who you serve. And so got, again, some very good feedback from the steering committee. Students were very passionate about making sure they express themselves, and as well as community members. And so those are some of the points of pride they wanted to share and make sure it was echoed in the mission. And so, again, just a reminder of some of those, their feedback. And so drafts based on the board feedback, after you guys looked at that last time, you all had some keywords that you really resonated with you. And so we took that, just like we did the vision, and created 2 options for you to review. The first one, we tap into and honor individuality and voice in all RCSD families and community members by creating a supportive, collaborative, and safe environment. And so again, that word safe comes up there because it was one that really resonated there. The other one is as stewards of Rochester's youth, we create a community of empathy, equity, and accountability that encourages the development of empowered students who are prepared to succeed beyond graduation. And so you'll notice again, as Madam President said, the vision is shorter and more broad. Here we get into the mission, which is a little more lengthy and goes into a little more depth. So I'd love to hear feedback on what resonates with you with numbers 1 and 2 on the proposed mission statements.
Thank you, Dr. Bernard. Let me start with Commissioner Patterson. You have any thoughts on those 2 samples or what we've given in terms of a mission statement?
I would like to come back around, review it, and come back around. Thank you.
Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, I would have expected that our mission would include the word educate. I don't see the word educate in here at all. I mean, daycares are supportive and collaborative and safe, but they don't necessarily educate, their goal isn't necessarily to produce graduates. So, and in fact, even the third one says success beyond graduation. It doesn't actually, speak to the mission of getting them to graduation. So
Anything else, Commissioner Powell?
that'll do for now, thanks.
Commissioner Simmons? All right, are you ready, Commissioner Malloy?
Yes, I am. Just to Commissioner Powell's point, I think we need to tap into academics, right? As a public school district, we are here to educate students. That's our charge, right? And I don't really see that or in either of them. I wish we could maybe merge the language a bit because we have different ideas, very different ideas in the first and then the second. Is there a way to combine some of that information? Because it's valid, but again, we've got to talk about academics. We are here to teach kids to read and write, to do math, and to become educated citizens. That is our public school charge. Thank you.
Commissioner Adams?
Yeah, I like the first one because it speaks on creating a supportive collaborative. When you're talking about that, everything fits under that. Everything, I hate to see so much stuff here that we get lost in it, you know, just overkill on some stuff, I believe. I believe when I say I'm creating a supportive and collaborative environment, that means educating them. That don't mean I'm sending them to college. That means doing all we can here, getting them ready for a job or whatever. But just doing whatever we can right here, man. I'm with the simple stuff. I like that. The first one. I'm done.
Yeah, it wasn't clear, neither one of these were clear to me. And to Commissioner Powell's point, I couldn't figure out why I didn't like either one, but it does have to do with the fact that there's nothing in there that's relating to education. And so while that, you know, is something that we should just have in our organizational culture, we've got to somehow, you know, to Commissioner Beloy's point, in some way, we've got to put it where we are focused. The mission has to be about educating our kids. I think that if we were to go with either one of these, I think that there would be a number of questions within the community, with our legislative stakeholders, just not understanding, you know, what that means. So again, you know, it should be a part of the organizational culture where everybody knows that this is what we want to do. But I think that, you know, again, to my colleague's point, we've got to in some way put education into one of them. Now, to Commissioner Adams' point, I like the first one better than I like the second one. But, you know, these are serious times for this district, and we can't do it with fluff. Commissioner Powell, did you?
A phrase came to mind that fits better in the second than in the
good.
first. But if we create a community of empathy, equity, academic success, and accountability, maybe. I'm not sure how to get academic success
Or
in
academic rigor, perhaps?
academic rigor. I'm not sure how to get either of those phrases into the first bullet. I can see where it can slide into the second option. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Simmons?
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with what's been expressed around making sure education is explicitly called out in these statements. I love what Commissioner Adams stated around simplicity, because I think that is key. And then out of what we have up here, if we could chop this up and simplify it and make sure education is in there. I also like the language around succeeding beyond education, because again, we have, or beyond graduation, because we have children that graduate and then are not persisting in our community. So I do want to see that language somewhere.
And I would just also point out that as we are looking at developing even our mission statement as well as our vision statement, that all of this has to be done in scarce resources. You know, so we've got to make sure that we're keeping that in mind, that our resources are limited, and that when we develop our strategic plan, that it is developed in line with what our resources are capable of accomplishing. All right, thank you. And any other questions? Let me just see if there's another. All right.
Ms. Patterson?
He had an opportunity to, no.
Yes, if you could come around.
That's not, I didn't hear that, but yeah, you can come around.
My
You-
next.
Wait, did you want to speak? Is that what you, I'm just checking because you didn't want to speak in the beginning. I just want to make sure.
Again, thank you. I'm going to thank you for your presentation. What I'm going to do, I'm better at taking this home, absorbing it,
Okay.
and kind of putting things together, drafting something, and then I'll make sure it gets to Dr. Peluso, if that's okay with you?
Sure.
All right, rather than try to just reply right now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Patterson. Commissioner Powell, you have anything else? Okay, Commissioner Simmons? Okay, Commissioner Malloy?
And then just one last suggestion, perhaps, we talk a lot about student outcomes, and I don't know if the general public knows what that really means. If there's a way to incorporate the term student outcomes or improve student outcomes, that is one way maybe we can deal with the academic part.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Adams, you have anything else? No. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I've taken notes and will absolutely, I appreciate that feedback, and we want to make sure that the feedback and drafts that we prepare address your concerns there. Did you have something, Dr. Peluso?
Yep, so the feedback that we could give, and I will incorporate this presentation again in the Friday board letter for you to review as well and provide feedback with. I was just, these missions and visions, right? What we're trying to get to is a place where they have some meat and meaning, right? And I think, when I look at the current mission, which says foster students' individual talents and abilities in a nurturing environment of equity, right? That's our current mission, right? There is no mention of education even in our current mission right now. And I think we have to make sure that we have something that's meaningful, that people could remember, because I don't think right now we want something that could stick with people and resonate with people so that it could carry them along the way. And that's where we are in the aspirational vision and mission philosophy of this.
Yeah, I didn't particularly like that one either, so.
Yep, nope, and that's why we're here. That's why
Yeah.
this has all been
Yeah.
great feedback and information so that we can get to something that we can all get behind.
Because indeed, I agree with it being aspirational, but it also has to have some substance because our community and our partners have to, be able to sink their teeth in what it is that we're saying and to be able to articulate it in other venues. And I don't think that we are really able to articulate some of this that we've been presented with tonight.
Makes sense. Thank you. So next and last thing on our agenda for the development of next steps and language to review, the portrait of a graduate. And so the portrait of a graduate is where districts really come up generally with about 5 key words or phrases that they say, when our students leave here, we want them to be able to do these things. So we've got some examples here, and I don't know how it looks on your screen. It's kind of tiny, so I'll read it out to you. Hopefully you guys can see it a little better. But one example we have from a district, they said they wanted their students to be confident leaders, empathetic collaborators, global communicators, creative.
Critical. Yeah,
Thank you. And then critical thinkers. And then they add language around there to really kind of spell out more explicitly what that means and looks like in the classroom, in the district, so forth and so on. And so again, going through this again, what is a portrait? It articulates the hopes, aspirations, and dreams the community has for its young people. It identifies and describes those skills and mindsets needed. And then no more than 6 words or phrases with descriptions. So 5 to 6 is generally what we see when it comes to the portrait of a graduate. A few other examples here for some districts we've worked with: innovative, resilient, dedicated, so forth and so on. So really thinking of some very strong characteristics, but thinking about some kind of in the thought process that you guys have already had in terms of what do we want our kids to see and be while they're here, but especially when they leave and when they come back to support us. And so tonight, as we round out this work, we want you to think about this. If you complete this sentence with a short phrase, my hope for Rochester graduates is that they what? if you had to carve out 5 to 6 words, what might those be? If you'll take a moment and think about that, and we'll discuss that and try to get that down to 6 or 7 words that maybe we can take back and do what we've done with the mission and vision and core values and come up with some things to finalize or draft down.
You want those now?
Yes, I'd love those now.
Well, yeah, I guess we can if everybody else is. I was still thinking, so we can start off with Commissioner Patterson.
I guess I should have held
And
those.
if you want, I can go back to the other slide to kind of see what other districts have done to see if maybe that kind of starts your thinking.
I have an answer response for you. I guess it was, I said it earlier and I should have waited. So once again, reading and writing levels, that they increase, and comprehension. It's very important that our students also know how to comprehend. And graduating on time. So those would be the important things, I think, for our students.
Anything else, Commissioner Patterson?
No, thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Commissioner Adams.
Well, in reference to what is a portrait, I actually like what identifies and describes, even though it's more than 6 words, identifies and describes the skills and mindsets needed for success in our rapidly changing and complex world. I really like that. It's really applicable. Math has changed. Is all kind of stuff changed. So for me, I like that. I just really like that.
Commissioner Malloy.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Adams wholeheartedly. I'd love to see something in our portrait of a graduate of our students having the prerequisite skills that they need for either career or college readiness. So I'd love to see that somewhere. But also some of the terms that I liked seeing in the other portraits we looked at included just critical thinkers or critical thinking, resiliency, resilient, and empowered. Thank you.
Commissioner Simmons. Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Commissioner Simmons.
As expressed by Commissioner Adams and Malloy, I do like the piece identifying and describes the skills and mindsets needed for success in our rapidly changing complex world. So I like that. I love that we have critical thinking is featured here already. When I think about the Rochester community and we make this personal and really think about what's going on, beyond critical thinking, one of the things is we have to look at the fact that we have an impoverished community, and financial literacy is something that I think our children could really benefit from, and I think there are districts that are doing that. I don't know why Rochester wouldn't, and I know that there are some things happening around financial literacy here already, and I'd love to see that expand. So financial literacy has to be on there for our babies. But yeah, critical thinking, financial literacy, and that's all I got for now, but I'm sure to follow up. I do have a question. You're gonna chop this up, bring this back, but there's also gonna be community voice added to this, and that'll come through the focus groups.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
So we actually meet with the steering committee again tomorrow. And so we'll share some feedback from you all and get some insight from them as well, and see if they have any other words to add or sentiments. Generally, we look like we did with the word graph to see the larger words that are repeated. So again, so far I've heard critical thinking twice, and that's usually a big one. College and career readiness is also usually another one. So
Can we add social justice? It might not make it to the top of the thing, but if we throw in words, I'm just gonna throw that out, because I think social justice needs to be in there somewhere. We need to be thinking about that. Again, we serve Black and brown students 90%, and those are critical skills that they're gonna need, because trust me, when they get out here into this world, they're gonna understand the necessary steps it's gonna require to get that justice.
So, Dr. Bernard, I would say that we should have students who are multilingual. If we're talking about them being a global marketplace, they need to be multilingual, that they need to have some kind of credential if they're not going on to further education. Critical thinking is something that's been used. And I would also say a lifelong learner. Things are just happening so quickly. And I will just, someone text me, and I'll just share with you what they said. The goal of education is to transition students from being dependent learners to being independent learners. So I would just also share that as well. Commissioner Malloy?
I love that. That's excellent, really great. I'd also say, I wanted to agree with Commissioner Simmons. I love the financial literacy piece, but also digital literacy, you know, living in an AI world, learning to be savvy consumers of what they're seeing. So financial literacy and digital literacy, I'd love to just echo those sentiments.
Okay. Mr. Aquino, did you want to share anything?
Just to remind the board that there's a commission, Blue Ribbon Commission,
Oh, let me-
Alicea, but, you know,
Thank
it's
you.
not gonna be the last time that I'm gonna be called Aquino, so I hope to grow a little taller. No, but that there's a Blue Ribbon Commission on
face.
graduation requirements, and this is the opportunity for the district to align the work that you're gonna be doing in the strategic plan with the work from the commission to make sure that, you know, you're ahead of the game, so.
Thank you.
And I do want, the Blue Ribbon Commission report is out, right? I'll link that to, they also have a portrait of a graduate from a New York State portrait of a graduate too included in that as well. So there is some guidance on this, you know, but this is about what we want our
Yeah.
Rochester students to be, right?
Thank you.
Any other feedback? Okay, so here's what I have so far. We've got a couple of checks for financially literate, critical thinking. We have CCR, college and career readiness. We talked about prerequisite skills for that. Digital literacy was also mentioned. Social justice, empowered, multilingual communication, credentialed, lifelong learning. Okay, and so what we'll do is take these and just look at some different options for it, and we'll look at some, for instance, I heard communications, I heard literacy, comprehension, a couple of things. What we may do is look at a broad statement, and because it allows you to do bullets under there, literacy, communication may include digital, other pieces like that. So we'll look at those and we'll look at some others. Absolutely gonna look at the blueprint to see how we can blend some of those to really accentuate the work that's already being done, to make sure that when we bring those drafts in, it incorporates as much of that as possible. Okay? So as I stated, we will be meeting with the steering committee tomorrow. We'll get their feedback and get some insight from them on the portrait of a graduate. They haven't had this conversation yet, so they'll get to talk about it. It's always exciting to hear from the students and your parents and other stakeholders about what they would like to see. And more times than not, your language and your thoughts align with theirs, so that's really nice to see. But we'll meet with them and go through that, and then we'll provide that feedback to you all as well, so you can see what their thoughts on are, and if they came up with any other overarching themes or concepts for the portrait of a graduate. And so if you have any other questions or
Yeah,
clarifications.
Commissioner Adams
now?
has a question.
Yeah, I'd just like to, I was looking on here at the steering committee feedback about who we are. And I really, we are one RCSD. We just started that last year. We need to give that opportunity to work. We don't need to have this other thing in parentheses. And I would like to kind of some way figure out how we could get that last sentence in there together as well, because that's what makes us unique. We accept everyone, you know, and we really accept everyone. It's no lip service. We really accept everybody, you know, as a public school. So if you could combine them two, I think it would be just a good suggestion from me on my way out. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Any other questions? Well, let me just ask about this, and I'll refer to what Commissioner Malloy talked about earlier in this discussion around representation, who's involved in the strategic plan. And so, Dr. Paluso, I would ask that, because this question comes up a lot. You know, there are no parents involved. There was no community involved. There was no this, when in fact there has been. Now the question becomes, you know, what is the definition of representation or community, you know, the community stakeholders? And I think at some point, because first of all, you can't have everybody. You know, you can't have 20,000 parents. That's going to be, you know, you can't manage that. But what is a healthy involvement from all the community stakeholders that we all can accept, because we don't need to continue to have this kind of conversation. We need to be able to settle on what the representation is so that we can move forward, because there's always going to be that criticism that this person wasn't involved and this person wasn't involved. You know, we can only do what we can do, but I think if we can come back, Dr. Paluso, with what a good representation of all of the stakeholders would be something that I think that can move us forward. Because I don't want to continue to have this conversation about, you know, who's not been involved in that kind of thing. But if we reach out, and if we reach out in a due diligence manner, I think that, and you know, if we agree on what that looks like, I think that from that conversation, we can move forward to the work. Commissioner Malloy?
And I agree wholeheartedly. I just, I think that needs to come out preemptively. So, and it's not that we shouldn't be having these conversations. I think we always need to have these conversations. We always need to be transparent with the community and not look at it as criticism from the community, but reassure the community that it is a sample representation of the broader community, right? And if we preemptively do that, then there won't be as many questions perhaps, but I would argue that we need to constantly question who was on there and make that clear to the community members.
But not so, I'm not talking about so much the question of who was there, but if we can, again, it goes back to, you know, are we being representative? You know, are we making the reach out there to, you know, are we making the efforts? Because even when you reach out, you know, there may be some people that may not, for whatever reason, you know, legitimate reasons, won't be able to participate. But, you know, have we done our due diligence? Because
absolutely.
while I guess what I'm saying is that if we can reduce that kind of conversation, we'll have more, and because if we've done it right, right? If we've done it right, if we have the right framework for this out there, then I think we can move forward, you know, and we can look to, you know, the groups that we have gotten involved. Now, does that mean that they're going to be able to make decisions in this? That doesn't necessarily mean that. They can participate in what the decision is going to be. But I think sometimes when we have people that say, well, there wasn't parent involvement, that they think that they're going to be the ones to make the ultimate decision. And that's this board's role, to make the ultimate decision. We can have that conversation, but we've got to, I think, untwist that they think because you know, we will take that involvement, but this board has the ultimate responsibility of the decision. So, and I think we've got to make that clear as well. So, any other questions or comments for Dr. Bernard? Dr. Bernard, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Dr. Paluso?
Yep, and I just want to highlight that, right? The steering committee is that committee, but there's multiple touch points throughout with others, right? And that's where the focus groups come. We've done surveys that gone out to students, that gone out to parents, right? So the steering committee collects that information, kind of helps guide the conversations, get some thoughts on the table, but there's multiple touch points throughout this that it's going to gather feedback. The focus groups, and we will do as many focus groups as we need to gather more input to make sure that this is real to our families and to our students to make a difference. And you know, I wish you all could go and come to all the meetings when you see how our students perform. They take charge of these meetings, and their voice is just remarkable. They are truly amazing. If you ever want to question, are we doing things right? Sit through one of those, and you will
I just
see.
went to a Student Leadership Congress meeting like a week or so ago, and I just sat back. I mean, they had the chart out, the pins going, and full ownership.
First
full
report out, any report out of any group, the students step up. Like usually you would expect and I've been in a lot of places where voice may be timid, they are taking the charge of their learning and their accountability and what is happening. I'm always in awe And if there's any time where you're feeling a little defeated about what is happening, seeing that is the passion and drive that you need to kind of do the work that we're doing. They are truly remarkable, remarkable young men and women.
Well, thank you, Dr. Paluso. Thank you, Dr. Bernard. That concludes,
Can we just get a list of all the meetings that we can get some of that, so that we can observe that as board members, like having access to those?
So it's all of that is listed. They're listed on our strategic plan website, but I'll get that out to you all
Yeah,
as well.
just-
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so very much, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Malloy for the HR committee. But let's take a break before we do that.
So, Camille,
About 5 minutes.
Break?
Yeah.
Okay.
they told me
Good evening and welcome to the Committee of the Whole for our HR. I am Commissioner Malloy. I just want to call the meeting to order. Can I get a motion to approve the HR Committee of the Whole meeting agenda, please?
So,
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. All right, we have no speakers tonight, and so we're going to move right into our agenda items. We're going to start tonight, actually, we're going to switch something around. We're going to go right into the second readings of our policy committee. I know that they had asked to put this item on the agenda tonight. Commissioner Powell, unfortunately, is not with us, but Charisma is going to walk us through the second readings, and it's my understanding it won't take too long. Thank you.
No, thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Good evening, everyone. So for the second readings, Commissioner Powell had mentioned this at the policy meeting earlier this month, that in order to close the manual out, she was going to fast track the policies. And so the first reading of both policies that are listed happened last week at our special meeting. Sorry, not last week, 2 weeks ago at the ESA special meeting. And the policies are response to intervention RTI process, policy 4206, and policy regarding de-escalation of crisis situations, policy 8200. The goal for the public that is watching right now is that if there are any comments, this Thursday's business meeting, the goal is for the board to vote on them. And so if the public have any comments about it or want to speak to them, they can do so up until this Thursday. But that is all. If any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.
That was very quick. Thank you so much. We're now going to hear from Chief Miller on a staffing. Oh, sorry.
Just go back.
Go ahead.
I guess I didn't really get that. What were you, just summarize again what you were saying.
All I was saying was that if there were any questions regarding the two policies
Yeah.
that are listed, feel free to ask, but that's all I had.
So let me just, this policy, with regard to some of these things have been removed, is that because, unless I'm thinking of the other policy, is that because we have the code of conduct to replace it? I think it may be the other policy with regard to, is it behavioral?
Are you talking
like
about 8200?
Yeah, is this the art that they can't put kids in a corner for punishment and those kinds of things?
So I'll let Adrian, General Counsel Neal speak to it, or the superintendent?
Yep. So if you're referring to the RTI one, the RTI policy, is that the one you're looking at?
That's what I'm looking at now.
Response intervention, that was a policy that we had brought forth originally, but there was real specifics in that policy regarding specific programs that we wanted to remove from there, and to say that obviously we want to have a system to diagnose and screen and measure, but we in the original policy had iReady. We had named something specifically, and we wanted to remove that out from that policy.
So I'm thinking of the de-escalation policy.
8200. So NESBA had an update to that policy, and I'll let General Counsel Neal talk more about it. But basically, our policy that we currently have, the thought was to just adopt NESBA's, so that is easier. And we're keeping the first paragraph that's currently in our current 8200, but recommending to switch the actual policy name and number to what NESBA's is currently listed as. But I'll let General Counsel Neal speak further.
So is some of the rationale why some of this language, you can't put a kid in a corner, and are we considering that because we have the code of conduct? Will the code of conduct replace what the resolution would be if there may be some behavioral issues going on? Or was that considered? I just really thought about that.
Charisma summarized it perfectly. There are laws about timeout and physical restraints and how and when those can be used. Policy 8200 was essentially our policy on that. There were some updates to the laws this year, making it, limiting even further school districts' ability to use timeout and restraints, and the way and mechanisms those things can be used. And there were things like parental notification, like same-day parental notification, and certain other elements. Given the number of changes, we thought it, at the subcommittee level, thought it more prudent and more efficient to simply adopt the NISBA policy, which was laid out very well and really addressed everything we needed it to address. So essentially, we did have a policy on this already. We're just updating the policy to incorporate some of the legal changes that occurred this year.
Yeah, but I was just wondering if, if these are some of the things we can't do, we do have, restorative practices, I guess, that we can use, and that's what I was thinking. If some of these things are forbidden for us to do, but of course we do, and that's what I was thinking, that we do have restorative practices that may be able to address some of these things, because, kids used to go in the corner.
There might be some parallels, but the code of conduct more addresses discipline, again, suspension-related issues. We're talking about like limited, like timeout and seclusion, and potential restraint if absolutely necessary. So the code of conduct, again, more addresses short-term and long-term suspension as opposed to some of the things required here, but there are probably some parallels, and our code of conduct is very big, includes a lot of elements, so there are probably some parallel in some parts.
So also, timeouts can't be used to cover, eliminate, and recess for students, man. We can't be doing that.
And I think those are all part of our code of conduct.
Yeah, that's what I
And
was-
then this is just
yeah.
in relation to crisis
Yeah,
de-escalation.
and restorative practices, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions regarding these policies? Anyone else? All right, I believe we can move on to our next item on the agenda. It's going to be a staffing and recruitment update. And just to be mindful of our time, I encourage everyone to ask questions. Of course, that's fine. But if you have specific questions that need to be answered, if you could put those on the question log. Thank you. Chief Miller, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Board of Education, President Elliott, Superintendent. Tonight we're going to talk about growing tomorrow's workforce today with some highlights on our vacancy data, our staff diversity data, and then a brief update on the teachers who are working through our Teacher Certification Action Plan. Those are the folks that are working towards certification and is it part of our critical Grow Our Own initiative. Starting off then, I do want to just take a brief moment to highlight some of the professional learning that we've engaged in and to anchor around best practice. As some of you know, I previously worked in the Syracuse City School District where we worked to form a partnership with Rochester and with Buffalo so that the three of us chiefs of human resources could learn from each other and try to address challenges that we were facing in our district. What we learned was that it was too regional, that it was too New York based, and so we were able to expand that network to create a community of practice of the chiefs of human resources in each of the districts that you see represented on this slide. And some of those districts are the biggest school districts in the nation, in the world really. And together, each of these districts serve 1.9 million students and nearly 310,000 staff. And so we were able to get some philanthropic monies to support us in our work and coming together to engage and to work together to bring problems to each other and to solve those problems. This type of community of practice is one that is incredibly valuable for any field, but particularly in education. And it helps us to work and to learn and to sharpen our edges and to support each other. And also that we learn that we're all facing similar challenges, such as staffing shortages, staff wellness. We're all facing challenges with staff, social emotional connections, and retention of staff. We're all working to grow pipelines to build tomorrow's teachers, today's, and we're all focused on diversity initiatives. And so I share that with you this evening because what we're trying to do is in concert with what other school districts are doing across this nation. And so I think it's important to just say that we're not just looking to our neighbors, we're not just looking across New York State, but we're working with school districts across the nation to try to sharpen our edge. With that, I do want to provide just an update on staff vacancies. And so on this slide, this is one that I think folks are pretty accustomed to seeing and familiar with. And when you look at this, you see the variety of vacancies that we have across our operations and our schools. It represents about a 3% overall vacancy rate in our organization. And certainly, we've been significantly challenged by some of our teaching vacancies. Something that we've talked about several times, and on this slide, you see the breakdown of vacancies by content area. And so it's critically important that we figure out ways to grow tomorrow's special education teachers, to recruit and retain our special education teachers, because that's where we're having the most challenge and difficulty. And certainly, our colleges and universities across the state are not producing candidates in these areas. And so it is a definite struggle. So I bring that to your attention. The other thing that we've worked to do is really prioritize positions that are in the classroom working directly with students. And so teachers on special assignment, we are prioritizing less than classroom positions. This is also a slide I've shared with the board before, but just breaks down, this is not just for Rochester, but this is across the entire state. This is what the heat map for the candidate pool looks like. And so while we have vacancies that I showed you on the previous couple of slides, across the state, across the nation, this is what we're experiencing, right? We are critical shortage in areas such as bilingual, ESL, and special education. And again, that's reflected in the data that we see. And so we're working to address these matters, but we are, as I've mentioned to the board before, we're quite literally engaged in workforce development work. That's what we have to do. It's not your typical HR work. Tonight, we want to put some attention on the need for greater diversity in the classroom. And so on this slide, you see some points that are important to anchor in and to understand about the current situation relative to diversity and the need for diversity in our classrooms. We want to ensure that our staff population mirrors our student population and that our teachers mirror better the students that they serve. Commissioner Simmons mentioned, and I'll just restate it, in the Rochester City School District, 91% of our students are Black, Indigenous, people of color, and our teaching population is only 24% Black, Indigenous, people of color, and so we have work to do. I'm going to go in a little bit deeper in each of our employment areas so that we can look at what it looks like for all staff and across different sectors of our staff. When we look at across the state of New York, we see some differences here and similarities relative to Black, Indigenous, people of color teachers across Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse, and nationally. For the next several slides, there's some definitions that I just want to put here so that folks know and understand the unions that are represented on the next subsequent slides, and that all these data are from October 2023, in contrast to prior years, 2022 and 2021. So when we look at this slide, just to orient you to the slide, you'll note at the top of the slide there's the title, and that this is the percent of all staff by race, with numbers of staff reflected on each, with 3 years of data noted. And again, the years are noted at the bottom of the slides. By color, you'll note federal race categories: American Indian, Asian, Black, Hispanic, not specified, Pacific Islander, and white, with corresponding percentages noted above each bar color. As you look at this data, I'll help with the math. In 2021, 38% of our all staff were Black, Indigenous, people of color. In 2022, it increased to 45%, and in 2023, it increased to 49%. So now I want to break out just a little bit further to look at the data a little bit differently on this slide. And what this slide shows is only new hire data since July 1st of 2023. The previous slide that I just showed you showed a snapshot of all staff at this moment in time. This slide, in contrast, shows staff hired from July 1st. And so as I take you through these slides, it's going to follow that format of showing a snapshot of the entirety and then a snapshot of folks that we've hired since July 1st. You'll note that there are columns for gender and that there's a total in percent for each race category. And you'll also note totals at the bottom of the slide with a demarcation for totals in percent for those who represent Black, Indigenous, people of color. On this slide, you'll note in the bottom right-hand corner that we have 570 new staff that have been hired since July 1st. It's actually an increase over last summer, where we hired 544 staff. Of those 570 staff hired since July 1st, 60% were Black, Indigenous people of color. You'll also note that 72% of our new hires since July 1st are female. As a summary of that, just to put it into context, and really simply, if we're going to increase the diversity of our staff, we need to hire the most effective people and people of color at rates higher than the current population, right? It makes sense. And so what this slide shows that for all staff, our rate of Black, Indigenous people of color is 49%, but since July 1st, we've hired 60%. So that's an effort, right, to change the impact and the outcome, and it's a difference of 11 percentage points. So I'm not going to go into the same orienting on the next slides, but I'll take us through them a little bit quicker. And this slide breaks down RTA, which is our teaching population. And so as you look at this slide, you'll note in 2021, 20% of our teachers were Black, Indigenous people of color. In 2022, 25%, and in 2023, 24%. This slide shows you that since July 1st, we've hired 213 teachers, of which 37% were Black, Indigenous people of color, 75% were female. As a sum, our rate of 24%, we had been hiring at a rate of 37%, which is a positive difference of 13 percentage points. On this slide, we break out by principals, right? Principals, besides our students, are the single most important role that serves our schools and our students and families. And so we've separated them out because most school districts find this to be a really critical data point. And you'll note that over the 3-year period, we went from, in 2021, 44% to 65% in 2022, and we've maintained that 65% in 2023. We are leading in this indicator compared to many other school districts, including the ones I put on the slide at the beginning of this presentation. In terms of other ASAR positions in our administrative ranks, this slide details the civil service side of ASAR, and we've noted that we have some significant opportunities here. You'll note that in 2021, 21% of ASAR civil service was in Black, Indigenous people of color. It increased to 30% in 2022 and 32% in 2023. For all of ASAR, and so this includes principals, assistant principals, and all the civil service positions, since July 1st, we've only hired 29 people into ASAR positions, of which 48% were Black, Indigenous people of color. To sum up, the ASAR rate is 36. We hired at a rate of 48, which shows a positive difference of 12 percentage points. Bente is the unit that represents our operations staff, primarily food service, custodial, clerical, just as some examples, transportation. And you'll note on this slide that we went from 65% in 2021 of Black, Indigenous people of color to 77% in 2022, and we've had a slight dip to 71% in 2023. I will note and call out that in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, you'll notice that 6.6% of the Bente unit we do not have race data on. And what we're finding more and more is that people are preferring to not disclose or not indicate that, but we're working to ensure we obtain the best data that we can. Since July 1st in Bente, we've hired 75 staff, of which 85% or 64 people were Black, Indigenous people of color. So again, this represents the current rate of 71%, hiring at a rate of 85%. That's a 14 percent point difference. Within RAP, our paraprofessionals and our teaching assistants, to name a few of the positions, you'll note here that in 2021, 80% of our RAP staff were Black, Indigenous people of color, 86% in 2022 and 83% in 2023, with a slight uptick at 4.39% in those that did not specify. Since July 1st, we've hired 134 members within RAP, of which 91% were Black, Indigenous people of color. And again, currently 83% are Black, Indigenous people of color. We hired at a rate of 91%. That is a positive 8-point difference. So overall, when we look at all of our staff by unit, you'll see on this slide just a summary of each of the current rates versus the hiring rates since July and the percentage point difference that's reflected there. We have work to continue to do. And we have people in positions who are working to ensure that we're recruiting and being smart about how we engage within our community to bring talent into the district. Our Office of Human Capital is reflected on this slide, the people that are doing that work. And you'll note that 68% of the Office of Human Capital are Black, Indigenous people of color, and 9 or 26% of our office are bilingual. Relative to the overall leadership of the district, the executive cabinet, those that work with the superintendent and with the board to lead the district, you'll note that 53% of the executive cabinet are Black, Indigenous people of color. So that was a lot. We went through those slides quickly, but I know that you have them, I know that you've seen them, I know that you look at them. What I want to highlight now, and we're going to shift, right? We just have a few more minutes here, is to talk about what we've been doing to grow and develop our staff. And we've talked about having and needing to hire staff to grow them, to develop them, to become certified. And so we work with this group of people where we've hired 266 people in this manner through teacher certification action plans. We call them TCAPs. And growing our own educators is a vital initiative for us to cultivate our own talent and to grow our talent, right? I mentioned at the beginning that we're struggling with this across the nation. We're struggling this within our own district. Colleges and universities are not producing, right? We, frankly, at this moment, can't rely on the colleges and universities to do it on their own. We have to come to the table with the candidates and put them into school, help them get into school, help fund their education. And so that's what we're doing, right? And we've had some success with that. More than that, it's a vital initiative for us as a school community because it ensures we are uplifting local talent. You'll remember the 4 teachers that we had our little living room presentation over at East where you met and you heard from them. We're talking about them and others, right? They're local talent who've worked in our schools in a variety of capacities, who are now taking that step to grow to become teachers. And that's critically important, not only as we grow and develop our local talent, but fostering cultural relevancy. This is a diverse group. They grew up in our city, they know our students, they've worked in our schools, and it's important for us to send the mission, or the message of possibility, and it's important for us to actively promote diversity recruitment. And so we're doing that through this TCAP strategy. And so on this slide, we summarize that because this is what is helping us to address our staff shortages. It enhances our long-term teacher retention. These individuals are folks that are intimately connected to our community. They're not likely to leave us. They're invested, they're here. It builds trust, what we're doing with our diverse population. And we are investing in the growth of our local educators. Not only does this ensure a sustainable pipeline for us to ensure certified teachers in our classrooms, but it also has a positive economic and social impact on our own community because we're hiring people in the community, helping them to get an education, fund their education, and earn a greater income and greater benefits. And so as you look at this, this reflects 247 teachers working under a certification action plan. We have lost 19, which as a percent is only 7%. That's a great outcome. Of those 247 people, 62% of them are people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color. And that's important because if we go back, our overall teaching population right now is only 24% Black, Indigenous people of color. This initiative is realizing a 38-point positive difference. So with that, we do want to just spend probably about 5 more minutes talking a little bit deeper about the TCAP, because you've asked, like, what's our progress in terms of getting people certified and crossing that finish line? So we want to just very briefly share the results of that. And so to assist me with that, Kara Vetter, our Director of Staff and Educator Effectiveness, is going to highlight the next couple of slides.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. You're much taller than I am.
And you were in my closet this morning.
Yeah, looking good. Thank you, President Elliott, commissioners, superintendent, and cabinet for allowing me to share this information with you this evening. This is not new data for you. This is data we shared at the last Committee on the Whole. But I did want to highlight that, as you see, we have very many that we're hoping by the end of December will be certified. I can share just in between the time that we put these slides together, we had 5 more certified of our teachers that were hired under TCAPS last year. We also had 5 more that were certified of our teachers that were hired this year, just in the past week. And we expect more to be rolling in as semester ends. And for those that have been taking certification exams, once they go through, they tend to release the results of those every few months. So when that happens, we get another wave. So it's coming. They're coming and they're making progress. I do want to highlight, we shared this data with the New York State Education Department when they were visiting last week to talk about our bilingual population and the teachers that serve them. As Dr. Miller mentioned, that's a high need area across the nation, the state, and in our district. We currently hired last year 24 bilingual teachers under teacher certification action plans. Of them, 5 have become certified, 6 will be soon certified, and then by the end of the year, we hope to have the rest of them certified. We do run into some challenges, which I was able to share with NYSED when they were here, and get their input and hopefully their lobbying efforts to help alleviate some of those issues. There is a challenge when anyone comes to New York State from another state or another country, having their credentials validated and having them inputted into Teach for them to become certified, so they're helping us with that. And we also lobbied to have extended time as an accommodation for folks that are taking certification exams when English isn't their first language. And that was put into place earlier this fall. So they now have time and a half if they choose to request it, which we see as hopefully a great way to help them overcome that barrier. This year, we've hired an additional 23 bilingual teachers. As of yet, none are certified, but they're on track. We have 9 that we're working with that have certification from Puerto Rico. So we're working through those channels. And the remainder, some have certification from another country. So that's a longer process because they do need to take certification exams. And then we have a few more that actually need more college coursework. So those are the ones those 5 that may take to the end of next year. Just to give you a picture of what a teacher certification action plan is, it is the list of steps that are needed depending on the pathway the candidate is taking towards certification. They're individually developed. I've developed every single one of them, so I know them well, and I can talk to each person on what is needed. They also, along with their plan, receive links and steps, like detailed steps to take so that they can move forward. And we create personalized connections if they need any coursework with our institutes of higher education. So we're not just saying you can go to Brockport. We're saying you can call Tracy at Brockport. Here's her number, and she's going to help you get what you need. So we have worked really hard in our department to create stronger communication and stronger partnerships with our teacher preparation programs. Like Dr. Miller mentioned, we're not getting as many candidates from them, but we're reversing that flow. And we're sending folks that we have within the district that have identified a desire to become teachers. We're connecting them with the programs we think would be best for them. So over the past year and 3 months, we've developed programs with the University of Rochester, Nazareth, and all the others on here. We've partnered with them not only to find connections and good fits for our staff, but to get tuition discounts, anywhere from 10 to 25% off tuition if they're an RCSD employee. We've worked out ways where student teachers can do job-embedded student teaching opportunities, so they're getting the same kind of field work that they need, but they're doing it in a classroom where they're earning a salary while they do so. We've shared about our teacher residency programs in the past. We have alternative teacher preparation pathways. Those are ways typically for change of career folks to be able to get what they need in order to become certified while also making a living. Lots of online learning options, and we have a few of our colleges that are helping us with reviewing those foreign credentials, which has been a huge help. Thank you for your time. I will turn it back over to Dr. Miller if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Before I ask the board for any questions that they might have, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Miller, for this presentation. I know there are probably lots of questions regarding, per diem substitute, those types of issues. We're going to have updates on a lot more stuff at our January meeting, but I just really love the snapshots that you've included in this presentation. Those snapshots give such a better picture of where we're headed as a district, and I think this new hire info, it really shows a healthy shift as a district towards where we want to be and where we aspire to be. So those snapshots from new hires especially, I would love to see if we can collect data on our ability to retain the retention of these employees long-term. But let's see. Sorry. I would also love us to, if we can tie some of these hiring efforts with student outcomes. Can we tie all of this to a positive trend as part of our progress monitoring once we make goals as a board, specifically tie some of this so that it's not so adult focused, and so we're starting to deal more with a student outcome focus as a committee. But thank you so much. This is a wonderful start. I think in my own school district where I teach, I'm part of a pipeline program. I'm helping to pilot it. There is a need across our nation in all districts. So I love to see that other districts are now adopting similar programming as RCSD. So you've really helped set this in motion, Dr. Miller, and I think we're seeing positive trends. I'd like to open it up to my colleagues for questions now. I'm going to start on this end with Commissioner Adams. Any questions or comments?
No, I just have a comment that I really need to acknowledge the progress that we're making. We really are heading in the right direction, and I take my hat off to you for that, man. Yeah. Good job.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Commissioner Simmons? Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to learn more about the homegrown efforts and what that really looks like over time. I love that it's happening internally, and I recognize that students going into higher education are not necessarily choosing or selecting teaching as a skill or profession at this time. But what are we doing in addition to identifying staff here? Like, how many, I might have missed it in the slide. Do you know offhand or a roundabout number of how many we have in that pipeline currently?
Are you speaking to the number that are currently under a TCAP or that are?
Yeah, currently identified as candidates that are saying, yeah, we want to take advantage of this opportunity. And you can say, yep, we've got 20 going through it right now. I think I got caught in the minutia.
Yeah, so with our different programs right now for our teacher residency, we have 19 in that.
Okay.
Of our 240 some that are under TCAPs, I would say maybe about 50 of them are still currently in a program or are working towards getting into a teacher certification program. The rest have been through a program or their career in tech where they don't require to get that certification, and then we help them get to the next level of certification by getting them into a program.
And then
So, but I could do a breakdown for you.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And then also, like, we're talking about skilled trades for our students. And we're struggling to even get educators in that realm. And then I'm wondering if you're seeing trends as far as, I'm trying to figure out my question, student interest in the trade that you're trying to recruit for, because we recognize that our students' thirst for CTE does not necessarily look like the traditional CTE, but it looks like that's what we're recruiting for. So what are your thoughts on that?
So we've been partnering with Dr. Cox in the Department of Career and Technical Ed to kind of project ahead. One of our biggest things, and one of the things I'm most involved in, is expanding our teaching pipeline through CTE, which we currently have TLI at East. We'd love to see that replicated at our other high schools. And I know planning ahead, we're looking at health and career, or health and healthcare careers, expanding that, which we don't have right now. So we actually have someone who's working under a TCAP that's teaching Spanish right now, but he was a nurse in Cuba. So we already have him working towards his nursing CTE certification so that when that program opens up, we have someone, not only a teacher in it, but a bilingual teacher in it.
Oh, awesome, awesome. I'd love to see students touch those little dummies, and they've got the thing at Rochester Regional had a great partnership. Is that what you call them, dummies, or what are they called? Those things. Slide number 32, you said we lost 13 people. We were talking about the TCAP, or 19 people on slide 32. We said we'd lost 19. Did we have an understanding of, or why we lost?
So there were very few, I want to say maybe 5, that were let go. It wasn't working out, wasn't a good fit. We did have some that opted to not pursue certification. And so that was the largest percentage of it, or that just decided teaching wasn't for them and opted for a different career.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to look at this some more, and I'll commit additional questions to the question log from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Superintendent, did you want to add something?
I do. I just, so for those TCAPs, I want you to, those are positions in other districts that someone would be potentially turned away from and said, go out and get your certification, and when you get your certification, come back to us. What we're doing is taking those candidates and wrapping our arms around them and providing them with specific supports to get them certified. We believe if we do this well, right, the relationship will be built with the district so that people will want to remain here, and we'll be giving them the support they need to get through this. Historically, what an applicant of this nature would be, well, you're not certified, we're not going to take you. We can't do that anymore with the number of vacancies we're seeing across the country in areas. We need to start to develop and work with our people to get them to a place where they could teach. And some of that may be that during a coursework, they recognize and say, I'm not going to do this, or they don't make progress to their coursework, we have to then sever from them in that relation. That's why you may see some numbers that are higher than that. But I do want to say, I go back to, Deputy of Education, Secretary of Education uplifted this work that we're doing specifically here in Rochester around teacher residency and work to get teachers across and being certified. So extremely important, and I think we get a lot of value around wrapping our arms around people, supporting them, and treating them right through this process, that they will continue to work in a place where they feel valued and respected.
Yeah, and that living room talk was an testament to that. And one last comment is, I love the graph that breaks down the disproportionate number of what our education field looks like here in Rochester among the different demographics and foci. So if you look at Bente, RTA, and RAP and all that, it's a stark contrast, and it's the reality that we exist in. And so I thank you for putting that slide out. It just affirms and confirms what we already know.
Thank you again. And that's why I love those snapshots, by the way, because it looks like we have this really positive trend going. They're pretty significant, right? And that doesn't mirror the community data, but within, I'd say 3 to 5 years, it could. And so I think we're heading in the right direction, and thank you for the work that's being done. President Elliott, did you have some questions?
Yes. So all of this is good work, and I congratulate the team. One of the things I don't see on here is recruitment to historically black colleges and universities. And in history, historically what has happened, the way in which this district was diverse had to do with the fact that you had people like Frank Willis, Archie Curry, and those people who were on the board at the time to go to the historically black colleges to begin to recruit. And so I'm going to propose that this board look at doing that. And if I have to get some outside sources to help us to do that, because we have not done that work. We have not. I remember someone meeting with me about going to some of the historically black colleges and universities that actually have education teaching departments, Grambling being one, for example. And so this board, I guess 30 years ago perhaps, actually, many of those members went to the historically black colleges to do some recruiting. And so I'm proposing that that's something that we do as well. So we make some plans to go to Grambling. We make some plans to go to the other historically black colleges that have education and teaching departments, and to begin to recruit at those colleges and universities that we have not done. We've done it locally, but we've got to increase this urgently and dramatically and aggressively. And one of the ways that we can do that, now, does that say that we're going to get them here? Maybe they want to participate in some great work that's going on in this, in the world, that everybody is not necessarily, all young people are not necessarily into money. It is about the work and, feeling fulfilled with some work. And so I'm looking and proposing that we go, some of the board members, or, there are some people within the district that I know that would be willing to go to these universities and be ambassadors for the Rochester City School District. But we've got to go there, and I want for us to make those plans to look at making those attempts too, because even with the universities here, I don't think that they really appreciate, and maybe I could be wrong, because maybe there are some people in those universities, that are surrogates for this district as well. However, it doesn't seem to be the kind of urgency that we need to have in this district, so that we don't see the kind of, dysfunctional behavior that we're seeing on our streets. So I'd like to be able to talk about that more, find some money to be able to do that, and let's get that done.
I did want to present on that, and we will. We have a plan. We are doing that. And a couple points I want to make. I agree with you. I agree with you that we need to do that as part of our strategy. One of the things that I think is important, and Bettina Love's latest book, Punished for Dreaming, she writes about that effort as a Rochester student. And I learned through her research and through her book that when we did that, it was at a time when racism of the South was such that Black, Indigenous teachers of color were being pushed out of their schools. They were being laid off, they were being exited, right? So the situation isn't the same as it was 30 years ago. It was maybe more feasible to recruit and entice people from the South to come to Rochester. And so what was also different at that time versus today is that, you know, all those school districts I listed at the beginning, LA Unified, San Francisco, New York City, and many, many others, they're all doing that too. So we are in fierce competition, and so it's critically important for us to know that, one.
But we can't we can't think from a deficit perspective. We got to believe, I don't
Yep.
care if LA is doing it or not, that the RCSD can go in there and recruit and, you know, compete with the best of it. We got to have that mindset,
Yes.
you know, even though the other ones are doing, and they should. But from my position, listen, I'm gonna get the ones that we need. I don't care LA or whoever is out there. And I think that we've got to have that kind of thinking so that we can, I just think we've got to be more aggressive. I think we've got to, you know, well, I won't get into all of that, but I just think that, yeah, they may be doing it, but who's gonna come out with the ones? And I think that we can do it.
Yeah, and what I wanted to say was, when we do it, we need to be really clear on what we offer as a community, right? Not just a school district, but what we offer as a community. And so your point about ambassadors, right, is critical. The people that we send, being really clear on what the opportunities are in our community and how this community can support people who are going to move to it, right? So being really intentional about those Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just as we're trying to wrap our hands around the teachers with certification action plans, if we're gonna work to recruit people from elsewhere, we have to be really super committed as a whole community to supporting and embracing and welcoming and setting up structures to support that, because we are going to be competing with lots of other people. So,
But we got to think that we can get it. And let me just also,
can.
to your point
Yep.
about that, and give you some of the history that has happened in the past, even when when Kodak was big in its day, right? So they would recruit people of color to this community, but they would not connect them to the community.
Right.
They connected them to the suburbs, so they were disconnected from the people in their community, of the people who had the same culture. They were disconnected from their sororities and fraternities. They were disconnected from their churches. They were disconnected from the nightclubs. Well, they weren't all disconnected from the night. They found what the nightclubs were. But
And
what I'm saying,
churches,
yeah.
and- yeah.
So we got to make sure that the cultural is also put on the table, and how we can connect them. So as opposed to, and I remember one of the teachers here was telling me that when students, when they came from Grambling, for example, they put them out at Nazareth College to stay, as opposed to connecting them with a home. Right? There were homes, there are people who will embrace them within the community. That was missing, and I believe that, and I don't have any data on it, but I do believe that that may have been what has helped to destroy this community, the Black community in particular, because you didn't have the kind of talent or skill sets so that our young people could see within the community. And so I think that's how we got to do it differently. And I think that if we can offer that, because I don't think, maybe they are, but people may not be even thinking from that regard of, to your point,
Right.
those kinds of community needs aside from their employment life, you know. And, you know, Rochester's a great place to raise a family. People do come and they end up staying, believing that they are only going to be here a year or two. So I think we've got some opportunity here that we got to consider.
absolutely.
Thank you so much, President Elliott. And as we move forward, obviously considering the history of the district, as President Elliott has mentioned, and how can we incorporate that into
And
our
can I just say this one
strategies?
thing? I have some documents that were given to me about diversity that happened, a desegregation report, I believe it was from the 60s on the Rochester City School District that I have in my, that I have. I think I have 2 documents around that. So I can also share that as well. Someone gave that to me.
Thank you, President Elliott. I believe Commissioner Simmons has a comment that she had wanted to make.
I just wanted to say, you know, because I do definitely believe in recruiting. I fundamentally believe in the HBCU, you know, piece. My older sister graduated from one, so, and man, going down there, I felt like I was at home, and I wish that I had attended an HBCU, to be honest. But I also recognize that the Great Migration has gone in reverse, and that most people here in Rochester and in other areas are actually running back down south. And I actually sat on a webinar a couple weeks ago, and it was HBCU colleges like Morehouse and so on, and they are actually looking to become charter school authorizers. And so that is not to negate the need for us to take advantage of that, but to also be sophisticated on how we go about recruiting. We do have a heavy lift, but I do align with President Elliott in the sense of we have to recognize that those things are happening. We do need to be sophisticated around what do we have to offer here in Rochester, how do we make ourselves competitive and attractive, but we have to look at it that way. What can we do to attract and see if we can throw our hat in the ring? And I agree with what was expressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons.
Yeah, that doesn't account, everybody is not doing that, right? So we got some opportunity, and that's what I don't want us to miss.
That's where we'll be different, I would contend, right?
Yeah.
In lots of districts, right, in New York State, or I don't know about lots, but several districts in New York State, we're recruiting teachers from Puerto Rico, right? And one of the things that we saw was a lot of turnaround, right? Because when folks came to our communities, we didn't embrace them, right?
Right,
So there's things
right.
we need to do
Sure.
to fully embrace. I know here in Rochester even, people came and met people at the airport when they arrived, right? That's a different feel and a welcome and a support. So we want to make sure we're wrapping our hands around people.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Patterson.
I'm going to keep this short. I thought there were both great presentations tonight. I appreciate the transparency, the honesty, especially the part on the Teacher Certification Action Plan, TCAP. That was great data, great information for me personally. On the other hand, it's more for the superintendent going forward. Taking this course through the Council of Great City Schools, Student Outcomes Focused Government. And they looked at our board meetings and they would like to see more information on student outcomes. So at least 50% of our meetings, from what they indicate, the Council of Great City Schools, should be focused on student outcomes. So if we can maybe incorporate a little bit more information on student outcomes in our meetings going forward, that'd be great. Well, thank you.
So let me just follow
Good
back
presentation.
on what Commissioner Patterson said, because you had sort of mentioned similar about student outcomes. So let me get it clear what you're saying, Commissioner Patterson. Are you asking about student outcomes as it relates to recruitment, or you were just asking a separate question? No. Because I know that Commissioner Malloy had mentioned it, so I just wanted to get an understanding of it, what you were.
It's simply a statement, and I'll let
okay.
the chair respond to that question.
Thank you. Yeah, so just in terms of student outcome-based governance models, et cetera, part of the program that we're currently involved in, they encourage people on boards to have over 50% of whatever's talked about at a given meeting tied to specific academic outcomes and connect whatever, if it's an employment data or whatever committee you're working on, if it isn't directly tied to a student outcome, you shouldn't be talking about it.
So we shouldn't be talking about recruitment?
No. Tying it to a specific academic outcome. You should talk
Okay.
about it.
That's what I was trying to
But if you can't make
understand.
those connections, then it's just adult-focused leadership. So I think that's kind of their take on it. So being able to tie more of what's being spoken about at a given meeting to specific outcomes that are related to the board goals and where we want to see us, it's part of progress monitoring.
So how
of
did they?
SMART goals.
How did they say you do that? That's what I want to understand.
Well, we start by making goals, and we'll do. I know
No,
we're working
but
on
just
For this conversation,
Yeah, I just wanted to understand, for my own learning, that's what I'm saying, just for my own learning.
I'm going to take a jab at it.
Yeah.
I would think that the conversation would be about, we need to, for example, let's use bilingual teachers as an example. And if we believe that we need to get X amount percentage of bilingual teachers in our schools, and by having that, this is going to answer to this issue that we're seeing with our bilingual students. So
understand.
just having that language carved out.
Yeah, thank you.
Wanted to understand.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
we'll know more of that once
Okay.
we've developed goals, and then we're
Yeah,
monitoring
for
those
my own learning,
goals.
I needed to
Yeah,
have that
fantastic.
initial understanding. But I just got one other question.
Okay.
I appreciate all of the work around teachers of color that are being recruited. I would also ask that there, in addition to there being a number of female students, that there are particularly Black male and more males who are part of this, because data is showing more and more the need for having Black men in particular within the family, within the community. And so we've got there's a power within the Black male and other males, but and we can't dismiss that. I'm really not a women's libber per se, because I understand the role of each, and it is important that we have men that are also a part of our recruitment efforts. I have no brothers, so I have a lot of friends who are men. I need that. I need the energy. So,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much.
Actually, that's like the rare unicorn in education.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
we
I
definitely
need to
need
have
that
men
increase.
around me. So,
Principal.
thank you.
I wanted to ask if the state monitor, Alicia, if you had anything to add.
Thank you. I just want to commend the district for moving on the right direction to recruiting more minorities. And to President Elliott, we send a group of students every spring break to HBCU colleges, and we make sure that one of our staff members from the HR department is with them. And that's the agreement. You let us bring the kids to you, you got to let us try to recruit your student to come to Syracuse. So it is doable.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. If there aren't any other questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Powell, I didn't even see you on the Zoom. Would you like to add anything to the discussion?
No, I missed the presentation. I came in just during the comments. I'm going to rewind or replay the video after it's posted, so I can catch up with everybody else. But thank you for asking.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Without further ado, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.